What if everything you thought was a myth was actually a forgotten truth? From the moment you first heard the word Atlantis, chances are it was presented as nothing more than a fantasy. Just another ancient story, like unicorns, dragons, or treasure maps, meant to entertain, not to be taken seriously. Most people heard about Atlantis in a classroom or a documentary and never gave it a second thought. A lost city beneath the sea? Sounds cool, but surely just a legend. But what if Atlantis wasn't just a story? What if it wasn't fiction at all? What if Atlantis was real? And more than that, what if it held the missing link to understanding who we really are as human beings? Not just historically, but spiritually? What if this so-called myth was actually a memory that lives inside us, hidden under layers of disbelief, distraction, and doubt? We've been taught to look at Atlantis as a place, something out there, lost to the ocean. But what if Atlantis isn't something we need to find? What if it's something we need to remember? What if it was never about discovering a lost city, but about reconnecting to a lost state of being? Atlantis, in many ancient stories, was described as a highly advanced civilization, more advanced than anything we know today. But not just in terms of technology. They were said to be spiritually evolved too. They understood how to live in harmony with the earth, with each other, and with something greater than themselves. They lived in alignment not only with natural laws, but with universal ones. But over time, they forgot. Their connection faded. Ego replaced wisdom. Greed took over purity. And in the end, they collapsed, not because of nature's wrath, but because of their own inner imbalance. You've probably heard the version told by Plato, the Greek philosopher. He wrote about Atlantis more than 2,000 years ago, saying it was a great empire beyond the Pillars of Heracles, what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar. According to him, Atlantis was powerful, rich, and well organized. But as it grew in power, it also grew in arrogance. And eventually, the people lost their connection to the divine. Their fall came swiftly. In a single day and night, the land was said to vanish beneath the sea. Most historians treat Plato's account as a metaphor. They say it was just a teaching tool, a way to show what happens when a society becomes too proud. But if you read Plato's words carefully, you'll notice something strange. He wasn't vague. He wasn't poetic. He gave detailed descriptions of geography, of social systems, of values. He wrote as if he was remembering, not imagining. Plato even said the story didn't come from him, but from Egyptian priests, passed down through generations before reaching his ancestor Solon, one of Athens' wisest lawmakers. The Egyptians described a continent that existed thousands of years before their time, a land filled with knowledge, beauty, and spiritual strength. Could they all have just been making it up? Or were they passing along pieces of a much older memory? What's more interesting is that Plato's story isn't unique. Around the world, in different cultures, we find similar tales of ancient lands that rose in wisdom and then fell into ruin. The Mayans told stories of Atlantis, a powerful land swallowed by the sea. In ancient Indian texts, there's Kumari Kingdom, another advanced society lost beneath the ocean. Indigenous people in the Pacific speak of Lemuria, or Mu, a continent that vanished long ago. Even early Egyptian stories hint at a golden age before the pharaohs, an age that mysteriously ended. Are all these stories just coincidences? Or could they be fragments of the same truth, echoes of a civilization that once existed, not just physically, but energetically? A civilization that held the blueprint for what humanity could become, and what we still have the potential to be. The more you look, the more you realize these stories follow the same pattern. A wise and balanced people grow powerful, lose their way, and fall. It's not just a myth. It's a message, a warning, a mirror. Because the fall of Atlantis wasn't caused by nature, it was caused by forgetting. Forgetting who we are. forgetting that our power comes not from control or conquest, but from connection to each other, to the earth, and to the universe itself. What made Atlantis special wasn't just its buildings or its cities. It was their understanding of energy, of frequency, of resonance. They knew that everything in the universe vibrates, that sound, thought, emotion, even matter are all connected through energy. Their technology reflected that understanding. They used sound to heal. They built temples not just as places of worship, but as chambers of vibration and light, designed to align the human spirit with higher realms. Crystals weren't seen as pretty decorations, they were tools. They could store information, conduct energy, and even assist in spiritual evolution. Pyramids, often thought of today as mysterious tombs, were possibly massive energy stations. Obelisks may have been tuning forks, helping to stabilize energy fields across the land. None of this was separate from who they were. Their technology wasn't something external, it was an extension of their consciousness. It didn't dominate nature, it harmonized with it. But over time, that harmony was lost. As some among them became more focused on power than purpose, the tools once used for healing were turned toward control. They tried to bend energy to their will instead of working with it. And when that balance broke, the collapse was inevitable. Not because the earth was angry, but because imbalance always leads to disintegration. And now, thousands of years later, here we are again. We live in a world surrounded by technology, yet we feel more disconnected than ever. Our devices pulse with invisible waves, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, 5G, frequencies we barely understand, weaving through our bodies and minds every day. But while we become more connected digitally, we've forgotten how to truly connect within ourselves and with each other. What if the world we live in now is just a shadow of what Atlantis once was? What if our obsession with progress has blinded us to a deeper kind of evolution, one that begins not with machines, but with remembering who we are? You've probably felt it before, that sense that something important is missing, that the world feels hollow, that despite all the advances, something ancient and beautiful has been forgotten. That longing you feel isn't your imagination. It's a memory surfacing. It's a thread tugging you toward a truth buried inside you. Because Atlantis isn't just about the past. It's about now. And it's about you. The fall of Atlantis didn't happen in a single day. It began with small shifts, spiritual decay, inner division, a loss of unity. Some Atlanteans stayed aligned with their higher purpose, while others chose a different path, one of separation, of ego, of domination. That split created a ripple effect. Eventually, the tools they once used to uplift themselves began to pull them apart. And we're at that crossroads again. The wisdom of Atlantis was never meant to stay buried. It was meant to sleep until we were ready to remember. And that's what's happening now. People around the world are waking up, feeling the pull towards something deeper, something real. We're starting to sense that the stories we were told were never complete, that there's more to the human story than we've been allowed to see. You don't have to believe every detail to feel the truth underneath it. Atlantis may not look the way ancient drawings imagined, but the essence of it, that balance, that wisdom, that unity, is very real. And it lives in you. There's a quiet echo in the background of life, something ancient, something we've almost forgotten. It's more than a story, more than a myth. It's a memory that lives just beneath the surface of our modern world, waiting to be remembered. That memory is Atlantis. Not just a lost city, but a symbol, a mirror, and maybe even a warning. In the readings of Edgar Cayce, often called the Sleeping Prophet, he spoke of two opposing spiritual groups in ancient Atlantis, the Sons of the Law of one and the Sons of Belial. The first group lived in alignment with divine truth, unity, and service to others. They understood that all life is connected, that we are not separate from each other or the universe. The second group chose a very different path. They pursued control, material wealth, and power. They used energy and life itself to serve only themselves, bending spiritual laws for personal gain. These two forces existed side by side for a long time. But over centuries, the tension between them grew too great. Eventually, the balance was lost. And when the energy of a civilization tilts too far out of harmony, collapse becomes inevitable. The fall of Atlantis wasn't a sudden act of divine punishment. It was the natural result of forgetting. Forgetting who they were. Forgetting the spiritual laws that once guided them. Forgetting the source of their power. It didn't happen overnight. It happened slowly, quietly, until one day it could no longer be reversed. And here's where the story begins to feel eerily familiar, because it's not just their story. It's ours. Today, we live in a time of extraordinary power. We have the ability to alter genetics, bend time with technology, communicate across the globe in an instant. We've built machines that can learn and grow on their own. We've created tools that our ancestors might have called magic. And yet, something essential is missing. In all this progress, we've lost something that can't be measured in data. A deep connection to soul, to nature, to the divine intelligence behind it all. We're manipulating energy and life without the wisdom to use it well. We've built incredible structures, but are watching our mental and emotional well-being fall apart. We've learned how to extend life, but not how to live with meaning. We've replaced wisdom with information, spirituality with entertainment, and intuition with algorithms. We're more connected than ever through screens, but more disconnected from each other and from ourselves than we've ever been. Does this sound familiar? This is why the story of Atlantis matters now more than ever. Because Atlantis isn't just something from the past, it's a reflection of the present. It's a choice that every civilization, including ours, must face. Will we use consciousness to uplift or to control? Will we choose harmony, or will we chase domination until it all comes crashing down? Many people wonder why Atlantis is still called a myth. If there was such an advanced civilization, why is there so little evidence? Why has mainstream history dismissed it? But perhaps the real reason the story of Atlantis has been buried isn't because it was never real, but because it was too real. Because if we accepted it as truth, we would have to face what it means for us now. It would show us that we are walking a similar path. And that scares people. So instead, we turn it into fantasy. We tell ourselves it's a fairy tale. That way, we don't have to look too closely at what it might be trying to teach us. But what if the forgetting wasn't an accident? What if the story of Atlantis wasn't lost to time, but deliberately hidden? After the fall, it's said that the survivors of Atlantis didn't just disappear. They traveled the world, carrying fragments of their knowledge with them. They became the founders of ancient civilizations, Egypt, the Mayans, the Druids, and others. They didn't shout their wisdom from the rooftops. They encoded it in symbols, in temples, in sacred geometry, in oral teachings that only those with awakened hearts would recognize. Take a closer look at the pyramids of Egypt, the alignment of sacred sites with stars, the unexplained precision of ancient monuments. These weren't accidents. They were echoes, fingerprints left behind by those who remembered. The Sphinx, facing the rising sun on the spring equinox, has erosion patterns that suggest it's far older than historians claim. Why is this important? Because if the timeline is wrong, then so is the entire story we've been told about our past. And if we've misunderstood our past, we may be misunderstanding our future. The ancient priests of Egypt didn't just study rituals. They studied the laws of the universe, vibration, frequency, energy, manifestation, breath, intention. They didn't pray to gods out of fear. They understood that divinity lived within and all around them. They remembered the truths the Atlanteans once lived by. But even that knowledge didn't stay safe for long. As time passed, new empires rose. Religions were formed, and with them came control. Knowledge was no longer something to be shared freely. It became a tool of power. Sacred libraries were burned. Truths were distorted. Those who remembered were hunted, labeled heretics, witches, or madmen. The Roman Empire, the Church, and colonial forces didn't just conquer land, they conquered memory. They rewrote history. And what couldn't be erased was turned into legend. Atlantis became fiction. Lemuria, a fantasy. The teachings of Hermes, reduced to superstition. But the wisdom was never lost. It was hidden in stories, in songs, in architecture, in dreams, and most importantly, in people. Because the greatest cover-up wasn't in the books. It was in the human mind. Convince people they are powerless, and they'll never go looking for the truth that lives inside them. Teach them they are ordinary, and they'll never remember they are divine. Keep them distracted, and they'll never ask the deeper questions. That's the trap, and it has worked for a long time. But something is changing now. People are waking up. They're feeling drawn to ancient knowledge they've never studied. They resonate with symbols, crystals, sounds, and languages they can't explain. It's not because it's trendy, it's because they're remembering. You don't need to believe in Atlantis to feel this. You just need to notice that quiet inner tug, that sense that there's something deeper, something real, that's been missing. Maybe you've always felt a bit different, like you didn't quite belong in this world, like the way society works doesn't quite make sense to you. That restlessness you feel, that longing, it's not a flaw. It's a memory, a pulse from a version of you that existed long before this lifetime, whispering, "You've been here before." Some say souls who lived during the rise and fall of Atlantis are reincarnating now, returning not to rebuild temples of stone, but to help rebuild the balance in consciousness. They're not here to lead cults or start religions. They're here to remember and to help others remember, too. You'll know them when you see them. They feel deeply. They see through lies. They are drawn to truth like magnets. They question everything. They struggle with the surface level world. They are healers, artists, seekers, disruptors. They don't need to be convinced of ancient wisdom. They feel it in their bones. Maybe that's you. Maybe you've always been pulled toward ancient lands, sacred texts, or the stars. Maybe you've had dreams that feel like memories. Maybe you've picked up a crystal or heard a sound and felt something shift inside you. Maybe you've always known, without knowing how, that there's more to life than what we've been told. If so, it's not an accident. You didn't find this message. You answered it. That feeling inside you isn't confusion, it's recognition. You don't need to be certain. You don't need to prove anything. You just need to listen to what your soul already knows. Because Atlantis doesn't just live in lost ruins. It lives in you. This isn't about rewriting history for curiosity's sake. It's about reclaiming your spiritual inheritance. It's about remembering who you are and why you came here. Because Atlantis isn't in the past. It's waking up now, through you, through all of us who are beginning to remember. The real question isn't, was Atlantis real? The real question is, what if I've carried it with me all along? And maybe, just maybe, you have. What if what you call imagination is actually memory? What if those strange dreams, quiet feelings, and moments of deep knowing aren't fantasies or coincidences, but fragments of something ancient within you? You weren't meant to forget who you are. You were never meant to feel disconnected, small, or lost in a world that constantly tells you what to think, how to behave, and who to be. The truth is, there's a deeper part of you that already knows. A part that remembers a time before the noise, before the world became what it is now. That memory, whether you call it a dream, a vision, or just a feeling, is the key to awakening something powerful, the Atlantean mind. The Atlantean mind isn't activated by collecting more knowledge or information. It doesn't respond to logic alone. It's not something you force or figure out. It awakens through energy, through vibration, through resonance. In ancient times, during what some call the Atlantean era, the mind wasn't separated from the soul. People didn't have to choose between intellect and intuition. They worked together. Thinking was not a cage, it was a tool of consciousness. Thought served awareness, not the other way around. Today, many people are waking up to that same truth. To remember the Atlantean state of consciousness is to remember that your awareness isn't limited by your body, your environment, or your circumstances. It's vast, it's powerful, and it's connected to something greater than what we've been taught to believe. Science is only beginning to catch up to what the ancients already understood, that the mind is not just in the brain. It is a field, a frequency, a bridge between the seen and unseen. And that bridge still exists inside you. Every time you close your eyes and feel yourself expand beyond the body, you're tuning into that frequency. Every time you align your breath with your intention, use sound to calm your system, or choose peace over chaos, you're reconnecting with a way of being that has been ignored, dismissed, and even mocked in today's world. But it was never lost. It lives in your biology, your energy, and your inner knowing. You don't awaken this ancient awareness by trying harder. You awaken it by tuning in, by being still, by listening within. Stillness becomes a doorway. Breath becomes a language. Movement becomes memory. And the more you clear out the conditioning, the fear, the doubt, the limiting beliefs, you make room for what was always inside you. What returns isn't just more facts. It's a deeper sense of truth. It's a feeling. It's resonance. You begin to see the world differently. You listen in a new way, not just with your ears, but with your whole being. You feel things others may not, and you trust what can't always be explained. That's not weakness. That's the beginning of remembering. The Atlantean state of mind was expansive and peaceful. It wasn't about control or domination. It was about harmony. Each person was seen as part of a greater whole, connected to each other, to the earth, the stars, and the source of all life. There was no separation between the human and the divine. Life itself was sacred. The spiritual and the physical were not opposites. They were reflections of each other. To awaken that consciousness today is to live from that knowing. It's to recognize that your thoughts carry energy, that your emotions shape your world, and that your beliefs act like tuning forks. They attract experiences that match your inner state. But this path isn't always easy. As the old patterns fall away, it can feel like everything familiar is crumbling. You may lose interest in things that once mattered. Relationships may shift. The things you used to tolerate, loud environments, fake conversations, shallow goals, may start to feel unbearable. And that's okay. That's part of the process. You're not falling apart. You're breaking free. The Atlantean path isn't a straight line. It spirals. It pulls you back sometimes, but each time you return with more clarity. It tests you, stretches you, and calls you to let go of what you thought you needed so that you can receive what your soul truly longs for. You're not here to run from the world. You're here to transform it. You're here to bring light into places that have been forgotten. To live in such deep alignment with your truth that others feel something shift just by being near you. That's how the Atlantean mind spreads, not through arguments or convincing, but through presence, through energy, through example. If Atlantis were truly just a myth, no one would care whether you believed in it. But they do. Institutions go out of their way to mock it. Scholars scoff at the idea. Society teaches you to dismiss anything that can't be measured or proven. Why? Because remembering Atlantis doesn't just change your view of the past, it rewrites your entire sense of self. It awakens something unpredictable. And a mind that remembers its own power is no longer easy to control. You've been raised in a world designed to distract you. From the moment you open your eyes, your attention is pulled in every direction: notifications, headlines, deadlines, noise. This isn't accidental. It's by design. If people are too busy, they won't ask deeper questions. If they're constantly entertained, they won't seek truth. If they're always consuming, they won't create. The system you live in isn't just physical, it's mental. You've been trained to doubt your own intuition, to ignore your feelings, and to trust only what others tell you is real. But that inner voice, the one that whispers, "There's more than this," is not wrong. It's the only thing that's been right all along. The memory of Atlantis never disappeared. It was simply buried. Not destroyed, but discredited, hidden beneath layers of ridicule and fear. Because if enough people remembered what Atlantis truly was, a civilization built on spiritual wisdom, energy mastery, and inner sovereignty, the current systems of control wouldn't stand a chance. Because Atlantis wasn't built on separation. It was built on unity. And that's what the world needs now more than ever. So what happens when you remember that you don't need permission to access truth? What happens when you realize your intuition is a form of intelligence? Your body is a sacred vessel, and your thoughts are not just passive, they're creative forces. The answer is simple. The system doesn't fall because of rebellion. It becomes irrelevant. Because once you reclaim your power, you stop giving it away. That's why the most powerful truths are hidden in stories and myths. That's why Atlantis became a bedtime tale, because if people saw it for what it really was, a reflection of who we once were and who we could be again, it would light a fire inside them, one that no system could extinguish. We live in an age where we have access to more information than ever before, and yet we are more disconnected from ourselves than ever. We've built machines that can think, but we've forgotten how to feel. We've mastered speed, but we've lost touch with depth. And still, beneath all the noise, the memory pulses. In dreams, in signs, in the unshakable feeling that you're here for more than just survival. That you came to this life with a purpose. That feeling, it's not random. It's your ancient memory waking up. And the more you remember, the less control the system has, not because you're fighting it, but because you're no longer feeding it. Atlantis doesn't return as a place. It returns as a frequency. It's not about a city rising from the sea. It's about your awareness rising in your soul. The Atlantean state isn't a destination, it's a way of being. And you embody it through your choices, how you live, how you speak, how you treat yourself and others. That's how the new Atlantis is being built, not with technology or monuments, but through consciousness, through integrity, through remembrance. The world tells you to look outside for answers, to move faster, work harder, keep producing, keep proving. But the Atlantean way asks you to slow down, to feel, to question what you've inherited, to stop looking for validation and start trusting your own inner guidance. That's not always easy, because everything around you is designed to keep you distracted from that path. But distraction isn't your destiny. It's just a challenge. And when you begin to choose differently, when you pause instead of react, when you listen instead of scroll, when you trust your inner voice instead of outside approval, you step back into alignment. And you're not alone. That's the beauty of it. Awakening spreads. One awakened person becomes a mirror for others. You don't need to convince anyone. Just by living your truth, you give others permission to live theirs. Atlantis isn't being rebuilt with stone. It's being rebuilt with presence, with love, with frequency. And it's already happening. People are gathering in new ways, not around shared opinions, but shared energy, shared intention, shared remembrance. You are not small in this story. You are a living transmitter of frequency. Every time you choose love over fear, truth over comfort, and curiosity over judgment, you're helping awaken something ancient and deeply needed. Atlantis isn't about where we came from. It's about where we can go. And now, more than ever, the door is open. But no one's going to push you through it. This awakening isn't forced. It's invited. And you get to choose. The new Atlantis rises not from ruins, but from within you. So the question becomes, now that you remember, what will you do?